Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Chapter 1. Woodcutter's Fortune. Long ago, in a town nestled between golden deserts and towering mountains, lived a humble woodcutter named Ali Baba. Unlike his older brother Kasim, who had married into wealth and now lived comfortably as a merchant, Ali Baba had little more than his axe, a small donkey, and a modest cottage on the edge of town. He lived with his kind-hearted wife, and though they were poor, they were content and thankful for the little they had. Every morning, Ali Baba would rise with the sun and venture into the forest to chop wood. He sold firewood at the market and earned just enough to buy bread, rice, and sometimes a handful of dates. He asked for no riches, only peace. One particularly hot afternoon, as he wandered deeper into the forest than usual in search of better timber, Ali Baba came upon a rocky hillside he had never noticed before. He paused beneath a large fig tree to rest and give water to his donkey. As he sat, wiping the sweat from his brow, he heard an odd sound, hooves pounding the earth and voices carried on the wind. Curious and cautious, Ali Baba quickly hid his donkey behind a boulder and climbed up a nearby tree for a better view. Peering through the leaves, he saw a strange and alarming sight. A group of 40 men riding horses, each with a large sack slung across his saddle. Their faces were covered, and they looked fierce, like warriors or worse, bandits. Ali Baba's heart pounded. Could these be thieves? The men halted at the base of the rocky hill. One, evidently the leader, stepped forward, raised his arms to the stone wall, and cried in a loud, commanding voice, "Open Sim!" To Ali Baba's astonishment, the solid rock creaked and groaned, then parted down the middle, revealing a dark, cavernous entrance. One by one, the thieves entered, leading their horses inside. Moments later, the rock sealed shut, as though it had never moved. Ali Baba waited, barely breathing. After what felt like an eternity, the rock opened again and the men emerged, but this time without their heavy sacks. Whatever they had brought in, they had left behind. The leader turned back to the stone and said, "Close Sim." With a rumble, the entrance vanished once more. The 40 men mounted their horses and disappeared into the forest, their laughter echoing behind them. Ali Baba climbed down, trembling with excitement and fear. Could this be a thieves' hideout? Was there treasure inside? He approached the rocky wall cautiously and repeated the magic words he had heard. "Open Sim." To his amazement, the stone parted again. He stepped inside, heart pounding. Chapter 2. The Treasure Cave. Ali Baba stepped cautiously into the dark cave. As his eyes adjusted, he gasped in awe. The cavern stretched deep into the hillside, and everywhere he looked were mounds of treasure. Glimmering piles of gold coins, silver ingots, jewels of every color, silks, spices, and fine weapons. This was the stolen loot of countless raids and robberies. For a long moment, Ali Baba stood still, overwhelmed. He was a poor man, but not a greedy one, yet he knew this treasure could change his life, and that of his kind wife forever. He walked slowly to a stack of leather bags filled with gold coins. They bore markings from distant lands, coins from Persia, India, Byzantium, and even China. Ali Baba took only what he and his wife could reasonably carry home, a few small sacks of gold coins. He didn't want to appear suspicious in town. He whispered, "Close Sim," and the cave entrance sealed behind him. He loaded the gold onto his donkey under bundles of firewood to hide the fortune. As he led the animal home, he couldn't help but glance over his shoulder again and again. No one had followed. He was safe. But he knew he must tell no one, not even his brother Kasim. When he arrived home, his wife, Zainab, noticed his odd excitement. "Ali Baba, what's happened? Why do you look like you've seen a ghost and a king all in one day?" Ali Baba smiled and whispered, "Come inside and I'll tell you everything." Behind closed doors, he shared his incredible discovery. Zainab was stunned. "We must give thanks to God," she said. "But we must also be careful. This treasure is not ours. It is stolen." "Yes," Ali Baba agreed. "But if we use only what we need and remain quiet, we can live in peace." Zainab, ever wise, suggested they measure the gold to better keep track of it. She borrowed a scale from Kasim's household, a simple balance with a measuring pot. But Kasim's suspicious wife, curious about why a poor couple would need to weigh anything, secretly smeared the bottom of the pot with wax. When Zainab returned the scale, the wax held a surprise, a gold coin stuck to the bottom. The secret was out. Chapter 3. Kasim's Greed. That evening, Kasim stormed into Ali Baba's home, his face twisted in anger. "You wretched liar," he shouted. "How did you come by gold coins? Have you turned thief?" Ali Baba, cornered, decided to tell the truth, but only part of it. "I found something in the forest," he said. "A hidden cave with treasure, but it is guarded by magic and danger. I took only a little for my family." Kasim's eyes gleamed. "You fool! That treasure is enough to make a man a king. Tell me how to get there. I must see it for myself." Ali Baba warned him, "Be careful. The cave opens only with the right words. Forget them, and you'll be trapped inside forever." But Kasim didn't listen. The next morning, greedy and impatient, he set off with 10 donkeys, each carrying empty sacks. He followed Ali Baba's directions to the cave. Standing before the rock, he raised his arms and called out, "Open, Sim-Sim!" The door opened. Kasim rushed inside and laughed with glee at the riches before him. He filled his sacks greedily, piling them with gold, silver, and gemstones, but when he tried to leave, he forgot the words. "Open barley," he shouted. "Open wheat, open corn." But nothing happened. The stone door remained shut. Kasim panicked. Moments later, the cave opened again, but not by magic. The 40 thieves had returned. Chapter 4. Death in the Shadows. The thieves stepped inside and immediately saw that someone had been in their hideout. The bags were disturbed. Their loot had been moved. Then they found Kasim, trembling and cornered with a sword in hand. He tried to bluff, claiming he was a traveler who had lost his way, but the thieves were not fooled. Their leader stepped forward. "This man knows our secret. He must die." They struck Kasim down. But rather than leave his body as evidence, they decided to make an example of him. They cut his body into quarters and hung the pieces inside the cave. Then they sealed it again with the magic words. When Kasim did not return by nightfall, his wife ran to Ali Baba's house in tears. "My husband is missing. He went to the cave, didn't he?" Ali Baba was filled with dread. He rode out that very night, with his donkey and a lantern, to the cave. He whispered the magic words and entered. What he found inside horrified him. He gathered the remains of his brother, weeping quietly, and carried them home in secret. Chapter 5. The Clever Slave Girl. Ali Baba returned with his brother's remains. He was overcome with sorrow. Though Kasim had been greedy and harsh, he was still his brother. Zainab mourned quietly, but they knew they had to act quickly. If the authorities or townspeople found Kasim's dismembered body, questions would arise, and the secret of the treasure cave could be exposed. Baba entrusted a loyal and clever servant girl named Morgiana to help them. Morgiana was more than just a maid. She was smart, resourceful, and fiercely loyal to the household that had treated her with kindness and respect. "Morgiana," Ali Baba said, "we must give my brother a proper burial, but we cannot allow anyone to suspect how he died." Morgiana nodded. "Leave it to me, master." That evening, dressed in an old cloak and veil, Morgiana went to a local apothecary and asked for a special healing balm. "My poor master," she said with a heavy sigh. "He is gravely ill, his body swollen with fever. I need something to soothe his joints." The apothecary gave her the ointment, unaware that Morgiana intended to use it to piece Kasim's body back together. Then she visited a skilled tailor, who was half-blind and could not recognize faces well. She paid him generously to come to Ali Baba's house at night, where she blindfolded him to protect her master's dignity. Working under her guidance, the tailor sewed the pieces of Kasim's body together and dressed it in fresh clothes. The next morning, it was announced that Kasim had died suddenly of illness, and a quiet funeral was held. The townspeople mourned the merchant's passing, never suspecting the truth. Chapter 6. The Thieves Plot Revenge. Meanwhile, the thieves were furious. "How did that man learn the magic words?" one growled. "And if he knew them, might there be others?" Their leader, a cold and cunning man, spoke calmly. "Someone else knows. The body we left behind has vanished. Someone entered the cave." He thought for a moment, then commanded, "We must find this second man. One of us will go into town disguised. Listen, observe, and learn who was connected to the dead man." A week later, a thief disguised as a traveling merchant arrived in the town. He wandered the market, stopping at stalls, asking questions. "I hear a merchant recently died. Kasim, was it?" he said casually to a cobbler. "Yes," the man replied. "A sudden illness. His brother arranged the funeral." Brother? The thief asked, surprised. Yes, Ali Baba, a poor woodcutter until recently. Oddly, he's done well since. The thief thanked him and returned to the cave with news. The chief nodded grimly. Ali Baba it is, he shall die, but not in haste. Chapter 7. Marked for Death. The chief disguised himself as an oil merchant and traveled to the town with 40 large jars on the back of his mules, 39 of which held his men, curled inside with daggers, and only one filled with oil. He arrived at Ali Baba's gate and bowed respectfully. Good master, he said, I am but a humble merchant caught by nightfall. Might I rest in your courtyard and shelter my mules till morning? Ali Baba, generous by nature, agreed without hesitation. Of course, honored guest, you and your animals are welcome. As evening fell, Morgiana was preparing the kitchen when she heard strange noises in the courtyard. She stepped outside and saw the jars. Curious, she crept closer. As she passed one, she heard a whisper, Is it time? Startled, she moved silently from jar to jar and found many more whispering men waiting within. Her heart pounded. She understood immediately. These were not oil jars. This was a trap. Morgiana rushed to the kitchen, lit a large cauldron of oil, and one by one she poured scalding oil into each jar, silently and swiftly. Each hidden thief met his end without a cry. When she reached the last jar, the real one, she left it untouched. Chapter 8. A Deadly Dance. Later that evening, the chief of the thieves sat in the guest chamber, wondering why his men had not emerged. Morgiana entered with a tray of food and wine. She bowed respectfully, her face calm, her eyes sharp. Sir, she said, would you like entertainment? I can dance. He nodded, trying to remain composed. Morgiana returned shortly, veiled and carrying a dagger hidden beneath her silks. As she danced, she moved closer and closer to the guest. Her graceful movements distracted him, and before he could react, she plunged the dagger into his chest. Ali Baba ran into the room moments later, having heard a cry. Morgiana stood there, shaking, the chief's body at her feet. She explained everything. Ali Baba was stunned. You saved my life, he said, and perhaps many others. Chapter 9. The Final Thief. Baba stood in the silent room, gazing down at the lifeless body of the thieves' chief. Relief flooded his heart, but it was tempered with fear. Could there still be more thieves? He turned to Morgiana. You have saved my life, my family, and my secret. I owe you everything. Morgiana bowed her head modestly. I only did what was right, master. Ali Baba and Zainab carefully buried the body of the chief under the cover of night. They cleaned the courtyard and returned the oil jars to the market in the morning, as though nothing had happened. Still, Ali Baba remained on edge. What if one of the thieves had not been in the jars? Unknown to them, one thief had indeed stayed behind in the forest. He had been sent as a scout, and when he returned to the cave and found none of his comrades had returned, he sensed something had gone terribly wrong. He traveled cautiously back to the town and discovered the same oil jars, empty and clean. And he saw the house, Ali Baba's house, standing undisturbed. He knew his leader was dead. I will have vengeance, he whispered. Chapter 10. The Merchant of Death. The last thief knew brute force had failed. He would try cunning instead. Disguising himself once again, he rented a small shop near the market, offering fine silks, incense, and rare goods. He adopted the name Khalid the Merchant and made friends quickly among the traders and townsfolk. He watched Ali Baba from a distance. He saw Morgiana at the market and marked her face. He learned the habits of the household. And then, one day, he invited Ali Baba to his shop under the pretense of friendship. You are a noble man, he said warmly. Let me offer you the finest cloth, free of charge. Ali Baba, still wary of strangers, declined politely. But Khalid persisted. Over the next weeks, he sent gifts, made flattering remarks, and eventually invited Ali Baba to a grand feast at his home. Ali Baba agreed. Morgiana, however, was immediately suspicious. This man, he watches too closely, his gifts are too fine, and he appears too eager. Ali Baba shrugged. Perhaps he is simply generous. But Morgiana's instincts would not let her rest. Chapter 11. The Feast. On the night of the feast, Ali Baba and Morgiana arrived at Khalid's residence. The table was lavish, covered with exotic dishes, goblets of wine, and platters of fruit. Khalid was charming and pleasant, but Morgiana's eyes never left his. As Ali Baba ate, Morgiana excused herself and began exploring the house. In a small back room, she found a sword and a dagger, both finely made, both recently polished. Nearby was a saddlebag, bearing the same symbol she remembered seeing on one of the oil jars. Her blood ran cold. She returned to the table with a calm smile. "Would you like a dance, good merchant?" she asked sweetly. Khalid, caught off guard, laughed. "Why, of course." She danced slowly, circling him, drawing closer with each step. Then, at the right moment, she drew a hidden blade and struck. Khalid fell, gasping. "You again." Ali Baba leapt to his feet in shock. "Morgiana, what have you done?" She dropped the knife and lifted her chin. "This man was the last of the 40 thieves. He came to kill you. He had already killed many." She showed Ali Baba the dagger and the saddlebag. Ali Baba was speechless. Chapter 12. A Reward of Loyalty. That night, Ali Baba sat quietly in his home, reflecting on the journey he had endured. From a poor woodcutter to the keeper of a secret treasure, he had survived dangers, betrayal, and death itself. And it had all been possible not because of luck or gold, but because of Morgiana. He called her into the room. "You have saved my life not once, but 3 times. I owe you more than I can repay." She bowed humbly. "Your kindness gave me a home when I had none. I only did what was right." Ali Baba turned to his son. "You are now of age. It is time you marry and begin your life as a man. I can think of no bride more worthy than the one who has protected our family." The young man, who had long admired Morgiana's strength and wisdom, stepped forward. "I would be honored." Morgiana, surprised and moved, accepted. That spring, the wedding was held, and the entire town attended. Though they knew little of the real story, they celebrated the union with joy and laughter. Ali Baba watched with a smile. At last, peace had come. Chapter 13. The Cave Revisited. Many months passed after the wedding of Ali Baba's son and Morgiana. Peace had settled over the household, and prosperity too. Ali Baba still lived humbly, though now comfortably. He did not flaunt his fortune, nor did he hoard it. Instead, he used it to support those in need, widows, orphans, and struggling families in his town. But there was one thing he had not done since the final thief was slain. He had not returned to the treasure cave. One morning, with a heavy heart and a clear mind, Ali Baba prepared for the journey. "Why now, father?" asked his son. "Because it is time to decide what should become of it," Ali Baba replied. "The gold was stolen by wicked men. If we keep it hidden forever, it will bring no good to the world. But if we use it wisely, it can change lives." He took a donkey, some empty sacks, and Morgiana for company, and traveled to the forest. Standing once more before the familiar stone cliff, he raised his voice and said, "Open, Simsim." The door groaned open, revealing the same glittering treasure untouched since his last visit. Ali Baba looked at it with different eyes now, not as a poor man hungering for wealth, but as a wise elder, entrusted with a legacy. Chapter 14. Secrets Shared. Ali Baba did not empty the cave. Instead, he took only what was needed to improve the lives of the townspeople. He opened a school, hired teachers, and provided food for the poor. He repaired the old well and funded caravans for honest traders. Still, he kept the location of the cave a secret, revealing it only to his son and Morgiana, now his daughter-in-law. "You must protect it," he said, "not as a treasure to own, but as a resource to preserve. Greed has destroyed men. Let it not destroy you." Morgiana nodded solemnly. "We will honor your wisdom, Father Ali." From time to time, they would visit the cave not for riches, but to make sure no one else had discovered it. They repaired the stone wall around the cliff with vines and brambles, and the words "Open Simsim" passed quietly from father to son in whispered instruction. Chapter 15. The Quiet Years. Ali Baba grew old with grace. Though he had known the temptation of fortune, he lived simply. He wore no jewels, ate modest food, and walked among the common people like one of their own. And he was loved for it. When travelers came to the town and asked, "Who is the wisest man here?" the townsfolk would smile and point to the gray-bearded elder under the olive tree, sipping tea with children gathered at his feet. He never boasted of his adventures. But Morgiana's story became a quiet legend of the brave girl who outwitted 40 thieves and saved her master with cleverness and courage. Morgiana and Ali Baba's son had children of their own, and to them the story was passed down not as a tale of gold and swords, but of choices. Even great fortune, Ali Baba would say, is worthless without wisdom. Chapter 16. The Final Lesson. When Ali Baba felt his days nearing their end, he called his son and Morgiana to his side. "You have guarded the secret well," he said. "You have used the treasure not for greed but for good. Now it is yours to protect." "Should we destroy the cave, father?" his son asked, "so it can never be used by wicked men again?" Ali Baba smiled. "No, evil is not in the gold. Evil is in the heart that misuses it. One day, someone pure of heart may need it as we once did." He gave them one final instruction. Never write the words. Speak them only. Let memory guard the cave, not maps. And with that, Ali Baba, the woodcutter, who had once lived in a crumbling hut, closed his eyes and passed peacefully. He was buried beside his brother Kasim, and honored by the town as a man of great heart and quiet strength. Epilogue: A New Beginning. Many years later, a great drought came to the land. The rivers dried, and people suffered. Crops failed. Traders stopped visiting. Morgiana, now a wise matron, called her son and whispered the words, "It is time." They returned to the cave once more. With careful steps and humble hearts, they opened the hidden door and took only what was needed enough to feed the village, bring fresh water, and revive the markets. And when the land bloomed once more, they returned the rest. Thus, the secret of the cave lived on, not in greed, not in fear, but in faith. And so the legend of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves became not just a tale of danger and treasure, but a story of wisdom, loyalty, and the power of the human spirit to choose what is right. The end. Moral of the story: Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. The story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves teaches several valuable lessons. Greed leads to ruin. Kasim's overwhelming greed drives him to his death. Unlike Ali Baba, who takes only what he needs, Kasim's obsession with wealth blinds him to danger and ultimately destroys him. Wisdom and caution are powerful tools. Ali Baba survives and thrives because he remains cautious and humble. He does not flaunt his wealth and seeks wise advice from those he trusts. Courage and intelligence can triumph over strength. Morgiana, a servant girl, defeats the most dangerous enemies not with weapons, but with bravery, intelligence, and quick thinking. Her actions show that true strength lies in wit and loyalty. Trust should be earned and used wisely. Ali Baba learns that not everyone can be trusted with secrets or power. He chooses carefully who to confide in and rewards loyalty and wisdom over status or wealth. Use wealth responsibly. Ali Baba does not let fortune change his character. He uses the treasure to help others and make life better for those around him, showing that wealth, when used wisely, can be a force for good. In summary, the story teaches that humility, wisdom, and integrity are far more valuable than riches. True heroism lies not in power or greed, but in kindness, loyalty, and courage.